Hello everyone, welcome to this pilot episode of Death by Variance video log. Today I'm going to talk about the life cycle of broken decks. So what do we mean by broken decks? What are broken decks? So I have a few definitions here. The first two are, I think, definitions that are generally accepted, while the third one is something that I brewed up on my own. Okay, so the first one is a deck is broken if it has a very high non-mirror win rate. So how high, it depends on WotC. I would say more than 60%, but some decks have even higher than that. And typically, if a deck has a very high win rate against non-mirror matches, then it's what we call a broken deck. The second is, and this is equivalent to the first really, is that a broken deck pushes the meta into a one deck format. If a deck is so good and its win rate is so high, then it will push the meta into most people just playing that deck. And maybe some people playing decks that are specifically designed to beat that deck. Like even putting in multiple copies of cards that you wouldn't put anywhere else, but you're going to put it in that deck because you know that most of the time you're going to face that broken deck. Okay? Now, on the other hand, so I actually think that a deck is broken when it fundamentally breaks the limitations of an archetype. So every archetype, so the broadest archetypes are of course your aggro, mid-range, control. All of them have limitations, right? An aggro deck is not supposed to have inevitability because supposedly if you're able to stabilize against an aggro deck, then you are set to win. That's not true when that aggro deck has inevitability, which we have seen before in Ramunap Red because of Ramunap Ruins, which will allow basically the opponent, which will allow the Ramunap player to basically finish you off with his lands. So it's not supposed to be able to do that, but he is, and that's what makes an aggro deck is not supposed to be able to do that, but Ramunap Red is able to do that, and that makes that deck broken. A second is a control deck should not have a win condition on turn 4. It's a control deck. It's supposed to take its time and slowly build advantage until it has control of the game. That's not true with just Kaisa Healy or with the control variant of Splinter Twin. Okay? So in both of these cases, and of course both of these play very similarly, and these are actually some of my favorite decks. So in both of these cases, you can just play a normal control game, right? And then win, I don't know, through some manland or some like even Snapcaster mages. In the case of Splinter Twin, you can win with Snapcaster, Bolt, Snapcaster. Uh, but then you can also win on turn 4, right? You can also win on turn 4 with Exarch into Splinter Twin, or with Felidar Guardian into Sahili. Oh, sorry, Sahili first. Sahili into Felidar Guardian. So that also fundamentally breaks what the archetype should be all about, and that is a recipe, in my opinion, for making the deck broken. So now we come to the focus of this episode. What is the life cycle of a broken deck? So this diagram shows you exactly what the life cycle of a broken deck is. Of course, we start here when the deck is brewed. We start here. So the deck is brewed. Okay, so somebody somewhere thinks of this deck and then starts playing it on different platforms, whether it's Paper or Magic Online or Magic Arena, and because it is fundamentally broken, it will win a lot of games. And then people will take notice that this deck is very, very good, and more people are going to use it, and so the deck will become very popular. So as the deck becomes very popular, then more people will add their inputs to that deck. So this is actually also in decks in general. It is at this point when the deck becomes popular that you get to see whether or not the deck is actually broken. Okay, so of course, if a deck is not really broken, it will become popular, but it will not have a very large non-mirror win rate. Okay, so it will still have its own, like if its win rate is not very large in the first place, it will stay that way. But if it is a broken deck, then as it becomes more popular, then its brokenness will also become more obvious. Okay, and at the same time, so as it becomes more popular, more people are going to use it. So the deck is going to be refined more and more, which is going to add to how good it is. Right? Again, here in between these two situations, I mean, in between these two events. If you don't know whether or not a deck is broken, it's going to become much more obvious within this time frame. Because if it's not broken, then other decks will pop up and beat it, and then it won't be a problem anymore. And if it is broken, it will keep winning. And it would seem like there's no stopping it. And like the only way to stop it would be to main deck sideboard cards against it. And maybe even then it won't be enough to stop it. Okay? So at some point afterwards, the deck's brokenness will now become clear enough for WotC. Now I say this with a lot of there's a lot of subjectivity in, I mean not subjectivity, there's a lot of factors uh, involved here. So WotC of course is monitoring play data, and I don't know when it becomes clear to them uh, that the deck is broken, and when they decide to do something about it. Okay, so I can't really say that they want to wait until maybe the format has gone through several months before banning anything, because we do have exceptions to that. Oko is a glaring exception to that. So maybe on the other hand, they do ban it when it becomes clear, or they do take action when it becomes clear that a deck is broken. So yeah, so that part is I'm not I'm not so sure about the inner workings of WotC. But really, at some point, they do realize, because they do have all the data, that the deck is broken. At some point, they do realize that. And sometime after that, whether it's immediate or after a certain period of time, they take action, which is the last part in the life cycle of a broken deck, because then a key card in the deck is banned, and most of the time, not all the time, most of the time, this is enough to kill the deck. I say most of the time because sometimes the deck will still keep uh, uh, surviving even if a card in the deck gets banned. But in standard, specifically, usually when they ban, like when they banned Ramunap Ruins, red was still good that time, right? Even when they banned Ramunap Ruins. Uh, but in many other cases, the deck just dies. Okay, and then onwards to the next broken deck. So it just cycles again. So once that deck is banned, it's possible, not always, but it's possible for a new broken deck to emerge because of the absence of that deck. And then the cycle repeats itself. Okay? So what does this life cycle mean for you? So for the competitive player, it means that the optimal strategy is to start playing the broken deck as soon as you recognize that it is in fact broken. So the key word here is recognize. You don't actually have to brew the deck that is broken. You just need to identify that it is in fact broken and start using it as soon as possible. This has one caveat, which I will get to in a while. But at the same time, I should point out that it is not as easy as it seems to recognize that a deck is broken. So sometimes you may think that a deck is broken when in fact it isn't. So on the other hand, a deck can be broken for a long period of time without it being recognized as such. So I give you two examples here. So for example,
Rakhristocats, which is basically the cat oven Rakdos deck, which has essentially pushed uh, agro-decks from other agro-decks from being a thing in standard. And my play data shows that Rakdos Aristocats has actually been broken for a long time. It's been broken prior to the popularity of Yorion Luca. So it was broken before that time. Yorion Luca probably stopped it from being broken just because Luca was more broken when it came out, when Companions came out, and then it became broken again after Yorion Luca was banned. So that's a long time. So if you recognize that the deck was very good way before, like back in Theros Beyond Death, or even maybe earlier than that, then you'd have had a long time to play that deck and to profit from playing that deck. On the other hand, let's talk about the other example here, Esper Doom Foretold. So Esper Doom Foretold, when it first came out, was touted as the next broken deck. Right? Everyone wanted to play it. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people wanted to play it. It became very popular after the back-to-back wins, I think, uh, of that deck in some important events, but it didn't pan out, right? The deck eventually died out because it wasn't broken. It's probably a good deck, but it's not a broken deck. And so there are a lot of decks that are able to be very capable of handling it, of defeating it. And so it didn't turn out as a broken deck. Now, this is important when we talk about this caveat that I talked about at the first bullet point. And that caveat is you want to build the deck only if there is still time left before a ban. So essentially, you have this period of time. You have this period of time between here to there. Now, that's the time period of time when the deck can still be played. Right now, if you are able to start playing it as early as here, because you're the one who brewed it, then props to you. You're an excellent deck brewer. But of course, not all of us can be that. I'm certainly not an excellent deck brewer. I dabble, but my dabblings usually don't pan out. uh, okay, so it has to be sometime after. If you're not the excellent deck brewer, it has to be sometime after. So if you're able to recognize and start playing here when the deck becomes popular, right? So you still technically have a lot of time. You still have a lot of time. So we don't know exactly how much time there is between this point and this point. We don't know, right? So it could be a span of months. It could be, in Oko's case, it was a span of weeks, right? That's a very short period of time. Uh, but of course, the earlier, the better, right? Now, on the other hand, suppose that you only start playing the deck here, or you only decide to want to play the deck here. So that's not a good thing as well, because there are probably no more important events in between that point and when the deck gets banned. Of course, this one, you don't know when that's going to happen, right? You don't know when that's going to happen. So that's why it's important for you to just play the deck as soon as you know that it's broken, right? I literally I know a guy who uh, bought into Splinter Twin, right? So we bought into Splinter Twin a day before the card got banned. It's like he bought Splinter Twin, he wanted to use it in Modern. The next day, card gets banned.
So, right? So you can't do anything about that if that happens. So that's why it's very important for you to start playing the broken deck as soon as you recognize that it is broken. So you also want to do that because that maximizes the opportunity that you have to actually win something significant with the deck. Okay, so case in point is, so I think for me, I realized that Yorion Luca was broken when I started testing it, probably somewhere here when the deck became popular. Okay, and then I was able to use the deck often enough, uh, so that I was able to win. I was able to win the cash prize in the MTG Arena Open, the going 7-0 in day two in the standard MTG Arena Open. And then afterwards the deck got banned, right? So there was the change in the companion rule, and then the banning of Agent of Treachery, which essentially killed the deck. Okay, but it's fine because, well, it's fine for me because I was already able to profit from it. Similarly, for Rakdos Aristocrats, so I've been playing the deck also here when the deck became popular. Maybe, so maybe even when the deck was not yet very popular, but people were already using it, it's already started showing up because I really liked the claim the firstborn interaction with the Witch's Oven and the other sack effects. It just basically shuts down any other aggressive strategy. The only good aggro deck, and it's not even really an aggro deck. It's more of an aggro-ish mid-range deck. Is Rakdos Cats. Okay, so I've been playing it then, but then after the ban on Yori and Luca, I started playing that again, and I played it mainly on Magic Online since July 11, and I was able to pull a 77% win rate with that deck, and that got me a lot of wins on Magic Online, including a top 8 in a standard challenge. So, and then the deck got banned, right? So you see the pattern here. So the deck got banned, and the deck's dead now. I mean, Cat is an integral part of the deck, but it's fine because I was already able to get enough wins from it, and I'm happy with that. So that's the idea that you want to have in relation to these broken decks. So in conclusion, watch out for broken decks. So I think that that's an element of the game that's very important to be aware of. That broken decks don't always appear, right? So for example, when we had uh, Guilds of Ravnica, that entire year when Guilds of Ravnica appeared, was released rather. So there wasn't a ban then, right? It wasn't until a year later that they banned Field of the Dead. But that's after Eldraine was released. And then they banned Oko sometime later. They did ban, what do you call that? Nexus of Fate. So they did ban Nexus of Fate, but that ban was only in best of one. Okay, so there can be long periods of time where there aren't any essentially like broken decks. But when there are broken decks, you want to be able to identify those as soon as possible, which leads me to the second point. You don't have to brew them, although if it would be awesome if you did. You just need to recognize them as early as possible. The third concluding remark is sometimes they are not obvious. I mean, sometimes they are obvious, other times they are not. And this is very important in terms of spending actual wild cards or money in building these decks, there are many traps. All right. So just because you feel that a deck is broken doesn't mean that it is broken. So and a few games with a deck means nothing. Like a few games of testing with a deck means nothing. Even if you win 5 straight wins with a deck, you could always just lose the next five, and yeah, that won't mean that the deck is broken at all. So you need to play a lot of games before you can and play it in an actual competitive environment before you can say that a deck is potentially broken. Okay? And with regard to this, or in relation to this, let the data guide you. Right? So you have access to a lot of data. WotC publishes 5.0 lists, decks that go 5.0 on Magic Online. There are a lot of trackers that provide data about which deck is dominating on the best of one ladder or the best of three ladder, uh, which are of course different meta. So something that may be broken in best of one may not necessarily be broken in best of three. So remember that. Right? So let that guide you. But at the same time, know that the clock is ticking. You don't want to wait until something has become very obvious already that it is broken. Because if that is the case, then it will only then be a short period of time before the deck gets banned. Right? So you want to still be able to identify the deck as early as possible. And finally, one of the signs of a good Magic player is when the decks that you use for long periods of time keep getting banned. So don't be sad, right? Don't be sad. Well, unless you're a paper player, and then yeah, I can relate to being sad about suddenly losing a lot of money over bans. I mean, that's something that's probably worth discussing in the comments, or maybe worth doing an article for another time. Uh, but yeah, in as far as Magic Arena is concerned, um, where it's much easier to bounce back from a ban because it's easier to collect the cards, um, and it's essentially free. So one of the good signs of a good Magic player is when the deck that you keep using get banned, because that means you're making the right choices. All right, so take heart and just find the next broken deck. Okay, so I hope that you enjoyed this pilot episode of Death by Variance video log, and I look forward to doing more of these. May the shuffler be with you. I almost forgot to say that. I always say that, always write that at the end of my articles, and now that I'm thinking about shifting to this format, so should also still say that at the end. May the shuffler be with you.